Bonjour, this is Jasmine. Thank you so much for stopping to smell the roses on Rue Madame. For those of you who are new to the neighborhood, I am a writer, a storyteller, and a community builder. I write about culture, politics, parenthood, and my life here in France. Speaking of my life here in France, I recently uploaded an article or an essay about breakfast. And my discussion with my husband, who happens to be French, and our routine of breakfast. And this led down a rabbit hole of asking myself the question, is life dictating me or am I dictating my life? So check out that essay. It's quite interesting. Hopefully you enjoy it. Head over to patreon.com and join the community of writers, creatives, and critical thinkers. This video is about my weekend in Brittany. So this is our third weekend away, having been released from our lockdown here in France. Partially, it's in partial lockdown, but we're open to travel more, so we are taking advantage. First it was Chartres, then it was Normandy, and this past weekend for the 14 juillet, or the 14th of July, better known as Bastille Day, we headed to Bretagne. Bretagne is Brittany. And we did a lot of the same. We went to the beach and visited a bit of the town, but it was so spontaneous, actually, because we didn't have a hotel, we didn't have anywhere to stay. It's 2.5, 3 hours from where we live, and we said, okay, if we don't find a place on the spot, then we'll just come back home. It's 3 hours. It can be a hustle, especially with 2 kids, but we can do that. Luckily, last minute, an elderly couple who had their gîte, which is their guest house, traditional rustic house, available last minute. So we jumped on it. It was such a good fortune because the 14 juillet, as you know, it's kind of like the 4th of July. You plan in advance. And we didn't do that. We knew we wanted to go to Brittany, but we didn't know for how long or if it would just be a day. But luckily we lucked out. A nice couple with their farm. We were at a farm with cows and rabbits and chickens. Our children loved it. We stumbled upon a small city named Vire, V-I-R-E, or V-I-R-E, which is not too far from the border, maybe an hour or two, but it took us an hour and a half to get to each beach. So there was a beach, we went to La Grande Plage de Barneville, and also the same beach we went the last time, which was La Plage de Cabourg. Very, very nice. Do you see? I'm a little sun-kissed. It was great. It was exactly what we needed, and it was an escape from city living. I'll show you a bit of our trip. Check it out. Jeanne gave us breakfast. We had eggs from her chickens, bread, jam, fresh jam. It was great. We found out just by looking around and checking out the scenery and what was in the house. The house was built in 1736. 1736? What was happening in 1736? I have to know. So, of course, I did a little research about what was going on at that time in France. This is during the time when France was over in the States, or the Americas at the time, trying to conquer Louisiana and Mississippi, and there was the Great Battle of Acquia, which, long story, the French troops were defeated by British and Native Americans. Go figure. So yeah, just a small nugget of history, thinking of where we were. Like, that was what was going on when this house was being built. That's crazy. So long ago. United States wasn't even in the United States. Wow. Other than our trip to the beach and the farm and sightseeing in Vire, it was a pretty chill weekend. Like, where we were in the countryside. So in the countryside, we didn't have any internet service. Our phones were out of reach. So we were kind of like secluded and forced to embrace what was around us. It was very relaxing. Brittany is known for their crepes, their cider, and their seafood. Unfortunately, we didn't have any crepes, cider, or seafood, but we usually have that on a regular basis. So we treated ourselves to an authentic French restaurant called Chez Maman, which is Mom's house. But it was really, really good. So if you ever happen to be in Vire, check out Chez Maman. Some news that I came across when we were driving an hour here, an hour there, and our ride back home, we listened to the radio. I heard about the French president. He was speaking on a French radio show, and he actually discussed the social unrest, which is uncommon because the French president is known for dodging touchy subjects. And I think all presidents are, but especially him, because there was also the protest of the Gilets jaunes, which is the yellow vest, and how there was chaotic, and there's been protests for, I think it's been a year actually, and it's quieted down recently, especially with the pandemic, etc. But he already has that on his resume of people running amok. So the protests, as far as discrimination, racism, and inequality in France, he dodged it. But living here, weirdly enough, I don't concern myself too much with French politics. I mean, I don't vote here. I'm a long term resident, but I don't vote. So I really am ni foi ni chaud, which in French means so about French politics. I know enough, and I keep in touch with the news as much as I should, I think. But this show, he was discussing discrimination, and he made it seem like discrimination isn't a problem here. Of course, that's an American problem. And also, he made it seem like people who were protesting, who did have something to say about the about injustice, they were separatists, or people just trying to divide the unity and the oneness of France by bringing up these subjects. So it was quite interesting, his approach, or laissez-faire approach of what's going on. I thought that was interesting. Other news, when I finally was connected to the internet on my phone, I read that some entertainment news that Jill Scott was judged by her looks by called ugly or something by a famous footballer. I don't know his name, who cares? It was kind of like, that's what we doing. I thought most of her attention was on justice for Rihanna, justice for like it was sad. I brought up this conversation with my husband about how in recent months, years, you had a lot of attacks from famous celebrities, famous Black celebrities to be specific, towards famous Black female celebrities. So you had Terry Crews and Gabrielle Union, and you had, who else? 50 Cent recently said something about Black women versus exotic women or something like that. And it was, what else? The famous rapper J. Cole, known for his conscious rapping and his powerful words, had a miscommunication with No Name, which is another hip hop artist, about this very subject, this miscommunication between Black women and Black men. That's just another recent example. This is a trend I find actually troubling, quite troubling, in fact, because we also had the social media campaign or movement of Black women asking for protection. This was recent as well. And the response to that was not a unanimous yes, it was mixed. You had men saying, yes, we're going to protect our Black women. I saw men with guns and protests with Black men speaking about this. And it was lovely to see that unity, that protection, that care. And then you had others that was kind of like attacked by this call for help and insulted and made to feel like they weren't doing enough, when it was just saying, please help. Please help. So yeah, that was some news. A good point to make is how we need to focus on the good. Let's focus on the positivity, the good vibes, the communication that does work between Black women and Black men. That is, I think, the majority of us, thankfully. The movements in the street, the protests, the unity. I think we do need to focus on the positive as well. However, I don't want that to negate from the fact that there are miscommunication and we need to be better at it. So we get that same argument when we're talking about police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and the police and how there's a systemic problem. They'll say, all cops aren't bad. Let's focus on the positivity. Let's focus on the cops that do their job correctly and are professional and forthcoming. That's perfect. But we focus on the bad cops because we need to fix that leak. So suggesting that us focusing on the Black cops is not productive, it's kind of like gaslighting and trivializing our pain and suffering. So that's the same thing. Yes, we need to focus on Black women and Black men who do communicate correctly and in a healthy manner. However, we do need to really shed a light on this gaslighting of Black women and their call for help and their need for a movement to be recognized and protected. That's important. So we can do both. We can celebrate our Black men and Black love while also calling you out, holding you accountable, and wanting better for both groups. But I think that was it as far as topics that I thought interesting. head over to Patreon to check out the new essays and articles uploaded for patrons only, full videos, and an international community. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.